Good morning, everyone. So, after activate, we now move on to analyze. By the way, I am Jerusalem Mariel and I will be the one to report this analyze part. So, the Great School Partnership has developed the elements of effective instruction framework. So, there are five elements, and the five essential elements of effective instruction can be integrated into learning experiences. And when integrated into learning experiences, these elements promotes students' engagement and academic achievement. So the first element is the learning environment. The learning environment supports all students to take risks, ask questions, and make and learn from mistakes. The physical space, routines and procedures, and development of positive relationships create a physically, socially, and emotionally safe environment. So the teacher here should must establish a conducive learning environment in the classroom. Meaning to say, this environment should be positive and free of distractions so that students can focus on the teacher and the material being taught. And it is essential, no, that teachers take the time to create a welcoming and stimulating atmosphere for their students, right? So, in other words, before you can expect learners to succeed academically, they should also feel safe, both mentally and physically, right? So, when we talk about safety and respect, which are vital to engagement and risk taking, the simplest thing or the first step you could do as a teacher is to simply put a poster in the classroom. Like, di ba, back in our elementary days, we makahinumdum ta nga, in our room, there are this slogan that states, "Welcome to a child-friendly classroom," right? So, by that, you are starting to create a safe classroom. So, talking about the physical space, tools and materials should be readily available to students. And diba, in a classroom, there are certain learning centers. So, as a teacher, you have to empower your students to use and move around the learning environment in ways that support their learning. The second element is cleared and shared outcomes. The learning outcomes are shared and internalized by teachers and students. These outcomes anchor and guide the choices of instructional activities, materials, practice assignments, and assessment of tasks. So, outcomes, they are understood and used by students to set goals, guide learning, and prompt self-reflection. So, it is important that everyone involved in the learning process must know where they're going and why the work matters. So, meaning to say, learning outcomes should be stated before the proper lesson. Like, we all know that, right? And the learning outcomes should be clear, both long term and short term. So, di ba, when we conduct our lesson, we first state our objectives. Like, for example, in science class, when we talk about renewable resources, you have to first state the learning outcomes because it will serve as guide for students. Like, for instance, sige, okay, class, at the end of this lesson, you are expected to identify renewable resources and non-renewable resources. So, such things like that. Materials, activities, assessment tasks are also selected by teachers and students to align with the learning outcomes. So, no, it is also important that both the materials and assessments are aligned to the objectives. Then we have varied content, materials, and methods of instruction. Students explore ideas and information in varied ways and access learning through multiple entry points. So we all know that students have multiple intelligences, and therefore the teacher should select content and materials that will engage or meet the needs of all learners. No, not only focusing on the majority. So you have to touch every learner good, no, to help them in their learning, to succeed in their learning. So in addition, the content provides students with essential knowledge and skills that they need to be productive members of society. For the method, um, I think it should be in science mostly. It should be cooperative learning. This approach involves students working together in small groups to complete tasks or solve problems. Since cooperative learning has been shown to promote teamwork and communication skills as well as improve academic achievement, so this I think is the best way somehow, especially when we in science when we want to um, do experiments, right? So for the materials, well, the teachers should select material for instructional activities that will meet the needs of a variety of learners. And also, students should have a choice in materials and topics in order to meet learning outcomes. No, kinahanglan jud na we have to be strategic and creative in our instructional materials to ensure the students learning. Then practice and feedback, the fourth one. So students have opportunities to practice what they are learning and are given timely, specific feedback based on their current performance in relation to the desired outcomes. So giving and receiving meaningful feedback is important for students because it helps them learn and grow. Feedback, actually, we've already discussed this in our previous discussion, no, about the importance of giving feedback both to the students and teachers. So feedback can help students identify their strengths and weaknesses, and it can also provide guidance on how to improve their skills. So there are many types of feedback. We have physical feedback, constructive feedback, and student self-feedback. So this student self-feedback is a type of feedback based on self-assessment by the student. So it will help them improve their performance. Um, Teachers should make sure that they are constantly interacting with their students, providing feedback and asking questions, right? To know if your students are really listening. The feedback should be, it is take note, should be timely, specific, and varied feedback. Then um, well, actually, it has a supporting belief, this practice and feedback. First one, opportunities for practice allow students to work independently, cooperatively, and with teacher guidance. Second one, teachers give students feedback that is timely, specific, and actionable. And the last, students are taught how to give, interpret, and use feedback in their learning. That's it. So the last element is complex thinking and transfer. Students are coached and taught to engage in higher order thinking through instructional activities and practice tasks. So the curriculum, instruction, and assessments are assigned to prompt complex thinking, integration of concepts and ideas, and application of learned skills to new material or novel situations. So yeah, assessment is an effective tool for measuring student success and can also help instructors tailor their instruction to meet the needs of their students. So there are a variety of ways to assess student success effectively. We have formative, summative assessments. Um, every for the supporting belief, they believe that every student is capable of complex thought and transfer of learning. And the higher order thinking promotes students' engagement in the learning that promotes transfer of knowledge or skills, prepare students for the future. So what does it mean? So you have to encourage students to think out of the box, no, to really para kuan jud ilahang ang ilahang to be able for them to know how to analyze things critically. So you can connect concepts, teach students to infer, encourage questioning. So such things like that can help promote complex thinking and transfer. So students engage in a complex thinking throughout all stages of learning. So from the introduction of new material to the application of what has been learned. Students ask and are asked questions that help them access and integrate knowledge to analyze, evaluate, and draw conclusions. So I guess that's all for the 5 elements. And these tools supports educators to design and facilitate learning experiences. So it is important to note that there is no single definition of effective instruction, and that what works for one student may not work for another. And there are many different teaching methods and approaches that can be considered effective, and it is up to educators to find the methods that work best for their student. So this is the concept, the connection of each elements to each. The framework is grounded in the understanding that students are more interested and invested in their learning when they feel safe in their learning environment, understand what they are learning and why it matters, the teaching materials and materials or methods applicable to them, have opportunities to practice, receive clear feedback on their work, and engage in complex, meaningful thinking. So this picture here shows the relationship among these elements and how it has been shown to be effective in the academic achievement. So I guess that's all for the analyze part. Thank you for listening.